What's up, guys? Today we are going to take a look at how we can organize a collection of data into something called a frequency table and see kind of why we do that, why we need a frequency table anyway. So I'm going to start off by kind of showing you this this table that represents roller coasters in the state of Ohio. And so there's a lot of information on here. Like we're given roller coasters by their name. We're also given, it looks like two different parks that, two different amusement parks that are in Ohio that have these roller coasters, Cedar Point and Kings Island. We're also given a column that represents the material the material the car uses or the roller coaster uses. So it looks like we can have steel versus wood. We also have different car types. So these are all categorical variables. And then the quantitative variables would be the speed and the height. So we're given this information, and this is a lot of information to look at. So we might want to narrow this down depending on what it is we're interested in. But we can see the individuals are the roller coaster names. We already talked about those. So there's almost too much information in this data set in terms of variables. So we can often organize this by creating a frequency table. So we're going to use Google Sheets to do this, to organize and summarize a collection of data, and we're going to talk about how to do this using Google Sheets. So, but before we do that, let's talk about what a frequency table is. It's just an effective way to summarize or organize a data set so that it makes it more meaningful and easier to understand. It's essentially counting each distinct value within a data set. So a frequency table simply counts the distribution of each distinct value rather than physically count the values of a specific variable and create a table. We're going to let Google Sheets do that for us. So without further ado, what I need you to do if you're watching this for the first time is go log into Canvas, click look at the calendar and click on the link titled Data Sheet under January 8th, and you're going to save this, make a copy and save this as roller coaster example or something like that. Then I want you to start by the very first thing you should see should be this list, not formatted, this list right here. You should see that. So your end result should look something like that. Like I have, like it looks nice and a lot better than what is you're seeing when you open up that form. So I want you to format it to get it to look presentable, something that meets your taste and whatnot. And then I want you to double click at the bottom where it's labeled roller coasters and change the name to roller coasters frequency tables, because we're going to make two different sheets with this roller coaster example. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do that. If you're watching this for the first time, pause the video, get that done, and then unpause it. When finished, yours should look something kind of like this. So nice and neat. Everything is way better looking than whenever I first initially opened this up. You are more than welcome if you go below this table on the sheet. I have directions and instructions for you, so you're more welcome to kind of work ahead if you want. But before you decide to work ahead and change anything on this page so we don't have to delete or redo something later, we're going to copy this page. So notice at the bottom on mine, I have another sheet called Roller Coasters Two-Way Table. We're not going to use this today, but rather than having to format this whole thing that I already spent time doing, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this page now. And so it automatically duplicates, and I don't have to delete stuff that I add to this or add stuff that I don't want on there or that I want on there. So working smarter, not harder. So the way we do that is we're going to double click that little arrow right there. We're going to double click. We're going to click on this arrow that I just selected and hit duplicate page. Then we're going to double click this and change that to roller coaster two-way table. And now we're going to organize this by creating a frequency table and using car types. It doesn't have to be car types, but that's what we're going to do for our example. So I'm going to start by highlighting our highlight column, start at cell D2 and highlight through cell D26. I don't know, my phrasing is all off there, but either way, if we're going to do a frequency table, I can literally go through and count all of these, and that's what a frequency table is. It's going to say, okay, if I look at this, I know that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16 sit-down cars. And then I can go through and I can count all the other types of cars. But I don't need to do that. And imagine our list was a lot bigger. Let's say we had 100 or 200 or 1,000 like data values on here. It's like that would take forever. So we're going to let Google Sheets do this for us. And we're just going to choose to organize this by car type. So we're going to highlight the car type column, including the actual car type itself in cell D2 on my example. And then we're going to go up to the top and click Insert, and we're going to select Pivot Table. It's going to give you a menu, and you want to choose a new sheet or an existing sheet. So we're going to select Choose an Existing Sheet and then Create. And there's going to be a space that pops up. And in that space, you need to type in H3. So what we're doing is we're going to create a frequency table, but we're going to tell Google Sheets where we want the frequency table to start. So if you look at my table right here, this is not a frequency table, but if you look at this table right here, like this table starts in cell A1, right? And then it goes down like from there. So what I want to do is I want to tell it to start somewhere not within the parameters of this table, like outside. So notice my last column I'm using over here is column F, and the last row is row 26. So I want to go past column F and make my table, or below row 26 and make my frequency table. I'm just going to say select H3. That's going to give me a space in between. Like this would be column G, this would be column H. So it gives me a space in between, so it's not right up against it. So I'm going to choose to make my frequency table end up in column H and starting in cell H3. And that's going to be the top left-hand corner of my cell. So once you do that, this is what that's going to look like, what you should see. There's going to be a menu that pops up, and you're going to want to select the Add button next to the rows and select car type. So click this Add button next to rows, and we're going to select car type. Then click the Add button next to values and also select car type. So now we're going to select where it says values and then also select car type. And what that's going to do is that's going to give us a frequency table. And you'll see some letters or some words and stuff that pop up there that you can't really get rid of. You can change some of the names of them, but you can't really move them at all. But this is me kind of zoomed in. This is what ours should look like, something like this after we are done formatting it and making it look nice. So this is what I'm going to give you all about, after you do this, give you all about 3 minutes to create this table, format this, get this to look nice and pretty. And then we're going to also talk about relative frequency, which is just a percentage chart, essentially. It's giving us, it's comparing frequency of an observation compared to the total number of observations. So it can be represented as a fraction, decimal, or percent. And we're going to just add on to this table and make a relative frequency. So now we're going to see what percentages of Ohio roller coasters are sit down and inverted and things of that nature instead of a number. So we're going to look at the relative frequency. So if I started in I'm going to look at my last column that I have for my table, and I'm just going to move over one, and I'm going to make a cell in J3, and I'm going to call this relative frequency. And underneath there, I'm going to put my relative frequencies. We talked about how to use math. I'm going to calculate these like using an equal sign. That way, in a year, if they change the amount of roller coaster sit-downs they have, that relative frequency automatically calculates. So we're going to use the equal sign. And since we're going to write these as percentages, and I want this to be clean, so I'm going to make them to the nearest whole number, all of which we've done before. And then I also want to make sure that I'm using math to add up my totals at the end. So this is kind of where we should be at right now. I added a column. Notice how when I added this in cell J3, I made sure that this color was consistent with this color and that my table kind of went along with itself. I'm just kind of extending that table. And then in this top one, you can see that I have my formula equals I4 divided by I10. Where are those numbers coming from? Well, if I'm trying to figure out the relative frequency of a bobsled car, there is one bobsled car out of 24 total cars. So to figure out that percentage, I would do 1 divided by 24, but we don't type in numbers, we type in the cells. So I'm going to type, this cell happens to be I4, and this one happens to be I10. So I'm going to type that in, and then you'll need to do that. You won't probably want to autofill this. I'm not sure exactly what it will ask, but in the end, all of your percentages should add up to 100%. So we can clearly see that sit-down cars have 67% of Ohio roller coasters are sit-down cars. Okay, so frequency tables do provide information. However, visual displays provide kind of more of an instant sense of distribution. So we're going to talk about two different ones that you need to know how to do. This dot plot, these are not in your notes. I actually took them out, but this is a way that you can represent that. So here's our table that we created. And this is what the dot plot would look like. It shows the distribution of roller coasters across car types. Each dot represents one of the roller coasters. We're not going to be using that in Google Sheets, but we will be using a bar chart and a pie chart. In Google Sheets, it's called a column chart. So a bar chart of a categorical variable will show the frequencies of the various categories as separate bars relative to a numerical scale. So we have a numerical scale along the y-axis right here. And so notice there's a 16 right here. This bar goes up to 16, so we can see that there's 16 sit-down roller coasters, which I can see from here. We can see what has the most, what has the least, so on and so forth. It gives us that instant sense of distribution. We're going to talk about how to create that. We also have a pie chart. So pie charts show frequencies as a rectangular edge revealing relative frequencies. So they're saying out of the whole thing, like what percentages, which we already calculated for this, what percentages are sit down or inverted or flying out of the whole. So this also is not in your notes, but I want to talk for a minute about like why we would use one versus the other. Do I use one or the other? When would I use one over the other? And so on and so forth. So it really kind of depends on the purpose, it really kind of depends. In general, when displaying a single categorical variable, like if we're going to do car types, or if we're going to do park, like where they're at. If we're going to do what was the other categorical variable we had? Material, like if we were going to do a single categorical variable like that, either one would be fine. But it's often easier to see similarities and differences in a frequency and frequencies, meaning numbers, as a bar chart rather than a pie chart, because that's what it counts. It counts how many of those things there are. So for instance, in this figure below, there are the same number of roller coasters in the range 50 to 99 feet as there are in the range of 100 to 149 feet. We can clearly see that from looking at this, right? That's counting up how many there are. The equality of frequencies is not as clear in the pie chart, because even though these wedges look like they may be similar, like we can't tell that they're necessarily like that wedge and this wedge, we can't necessarily tell that they're exact. So it's not as obvious here. Pie charts are much better at revealing relative frequencies. So we can see easily that slightly less than 1/4 of Ohio roller coasters are in the height range of at least 200 feet. So that would be like talking about this, right? That's almost 1/4. And what does that category represent? At least 200 feet. But this is much harder to see in the bar chart. So we're going to start by talking about how to create a bar chart and a pie chart in Google Sheets using the frequency table we just created. So to create a pie chart, we're going to start by highlighting cells H3 through I9 and click Insert Chart. So that should be your table. And format it by changing the colors of each wedge, explore styles, change colors of the font, and bold font. I would just encourage you to kind of play along with this. I'm not going to go through and talk about how to do all of the formatting and stuff. That's kind of for you to kind of explore with. But I do want you to change the title to say Ohio Roller Coasters by car type, and double click on an area of the graph to change the formatting. So I'm going to give you all 5 minutes. I made mine kind of look like this. You can make them 3D. You can change the colors. You can have them show the percentages, not show the percentages. You can change the color of each one of those wedges. You can change the color of the background. But I do want y'all's to be somewhat formatted, and I want it to have a title and mess around with the colors and things like that. A pie and column chart. We're going to go back to the same thing, but this time we're going to create a bar graph and highlight the same cells and click insert chart. Oh, it should say cells. Hold on. So create a bar graph by highlighting the same cells we just did for the pie chart. But under the chart type that pops up on the side, we're going to select column chart and format it by making the colors match the wedges from the pie chart. Explorer, once again, with borders, colors, text styles, etc. If you click anywhere on, if you double click anywhere on this, it's going to bring up a menu that will bring like fonts and bolding and different styles. Notice my colors for the words bobsledding, flying, inverted, so on and so forth, and my y-axis, the 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, those are all in blue, right? And then I can click on frequency and car type and Ohio Roller Coasters by car type. Change the color, change the font, change the centering, blah, blah, blah. I can also make it my charts 3-dimensional, but I do want both pie charts, both pie chart and bar graph or column chart. I want them to match in terms of the wedge colors. So whatever you choose from there, let's make them match. We want to change the title to say Ohio Roller Coasters by car type, and then double click each bar to change its color or add a border and border color. So to start with, we started with a data set that looked like this, and then we narrowed down our focus onto something that looks more like this. And so that's kind of where we're headed. So that is all we have for today. We're going to get some more practice with this tomorrow and the rest of this unit.